Hello and welcome to another episode of News of the Week. And since we're still in summer, the question always is every week, what is actually the news? What's actually really been going on? And there were like 3 or 4 things depending on how you look at it. So the first one, which I had already written about in our newsletter and in other articles and kind of hopefully sensitized you a little bit to take a look at, is the summit of the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They had their summit in South Africa this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And the result of that summit was that they announced an expansion by 6 more countries, plus there are about like 35 other countries in the pipeline that all want to join. And the thing that is relevant to us in this context is that the main reason why these guys all want to come together in this new, whatever it's going to be called, nation grouping is that they no longer really want to pay their bills and pay any kind of trade exchanges in US dollars. And you can see this in a sense of who are these countries that they added. Most of them are countries that have resources like Saudi Arabia, for example, and the United Emirates. They have natural gas, they have a lot of oil. Surprisingly, they also added Iran, which is probably not really going to be appreciated by the United States. But all these countries have a lot of resources. And in the past, because of the US currency being the reserve currency, all these trades, when somebody bought or sold oil or gas or stuff like that, were basically settled in US dollars, and they don't want to do this anymore. Now, for now, this new grouping will allow them to pay in their national currency, like rupees and ruble and yuan and stuff like that. But the longer term goal will be to have a currency and what's called a trade currency, which they will then be able to trade with each other and use that currency without having to exchange into from one to the other anymore and potentially have fees and exchange differences and stuff like that. So that's kind of an interesting thing. And you might ask yourself, how is this relevant in the context of real estate investing or investing in general for us? And the reason it's relevant is if and when the US dollar is not as much in use anymore, is not as much of a reserve currency anymore, then it is very likely that inflation will increase for us and that countries in the world will no longer be easily taking our debt, meaning like our treasury bonds, whenever they buy something from us, right? Like you can read it, look at Google or type in if you want to do a little more research, and you will find under the term outsourcing inflation, what that really means when we buy something and pay with US dollars and then urge the country or the people that we pay to buy treasury bills or treasury notes, which is basically what our debt is. So we're outsourcing our debt. Well, if they can do all their trading in different currencies other than the dollar, they don't need to do this anymore, which will make it harder for us to continue to pile on debt. So that's one thing that happened this week. The other thing that happened this week that affected me, and some of you may have actually seen this, is that for a little while and for no reason that I'm aware of, I was suddenly banned from LinkedIn. And a lot of you I am connected with on LinkedIn, and even a broader network I'm connected on LinkedIn. And most businesses nowadays in the Western world, when they're looking if they want to do business with somebody or want to see, mainly in the corporate world, they go on LinkedIn and look at your profile. So it felt a little weird, but I have some good news. As much as nobody told me, and I had no idea why I got banned, and it said temporarily restricted. Nobody told me. Nobody ever got in touch with me, nothing. But then suddenly yesterday I got an email that there was a connection request. And I'm like, why would I get a connection request when I'm banned? And so I tried to log in again and hey, I'm back on LinkedIn. Again, no notice, nothing. They didn't tell me why they restricted and banned me, and they didn't tell me why they let me back in. But it's all back there. It's all good. If you like to send me messages or send anybody my way or read our articles or stuff like that, we are back on LinkedIn. The third thing that happened, and it's kind of related, and I don't know, maybe the universe was just trying to play a trick on me over the summer. But the third thing that happened was that I had a very, very nice meeting with family at a great hotel in the area here overlooking the mountains and stuff like that. Wonderful celebration. And so pretty late at night, we driving home, we coming home and putting my wallet aside. And normally there's a spot next to my wallet where I put my cell phone. And I'm like, where's my cell phone? Did I leave it in the car? I go to the car, not in the car. I'm realizing, oh, I must have left it at the restaurant. So I called them right away, and it was, like I said, the restaurant of a huge hotel, so they're open 24/7. They had already found it, they put it aside. Next day I went and got it back. But overnight, or actually the next morning when I woke up, I'm like thinking, what actually happens if the phone that they found is not mine and my phone is gone or somebody picked it or stuff like that? And I realized how many things I have on my phone that I have nowhere else. Contact information on certain apps, or my authenticator, for example, for two-factor authentication for all kinds of things is on the phone, obviously. Well, what do you do and how do you actually operate if you have no means of two-factor authentication? Because the app is on the phone and the phone number is also on the phone, so then what? Right? So all that kind of stuff went through my mind. I calmed myself down because I realized, okay, I have backup. I do a daily backup of the phone. So if it were really the case, I could just call the phone company, get another phone, install the backup. It would all work out somehow. But it really gave me pause, right? So I was banned on LinkedIn for a little bit. I forgot my phone after the celebration. So it felt a little weird, and I just want to encourage you to think about how that is for you, and especially when it comes to backups on dependabilities, to take a look at that. And then the last 3.5 thing that happened this week, and I don't know if you saw that, is that Jerome Powell was at the annual Jackson Hole financial meeting. That's like where rich people come together and talk about finance. But the important thing was that he held a speech about where is the Federal Reserve right now and where are they going. And for me, the most important thing out of that was that they acknowledged that inflation is still too high, and I would agree. They also are a little worried, and that makes sense to me, because businesses have not really shown any significant impact of these higher rates that we have now for the last 12 months. Everybody expected profits would go down, sales would go down, unemployment would go up, and none of that has really happened. So their conclusion in the speech was, well, none of the things that we expected have happened yet. We know that there is a delay when you increase interest rates. It's not instantaneous, but they have been increased for a while now, and we still haven't seen anything. So that could be an indication that we need to continue to increase a little further to get the desired, from their perspective, effects. So what does that mean? Right now, if you look in the news, you will see that mortgage interest rates for regular, like owner-occupied houses, is like in the 7 to 8%. And for us as investors, it's now in the area between like the upper 7s and low 8%. And if they were to continue to increase rates, it will keep going up. The shocking thing that I saw this morning, and that's what I'm going to close on, is that people are still putting huge amounts of debt, if you want to, on their credit cards, even though credit cards are now charging between 20 and 30% interest, which to me is completely insane. I don't have any credit card debt, and I encourage you not to have any either. You can use them, but pay them off at the end of the month, so that you never have to pay the interest. But 20 to 30% interest on credit cards, and more people put stuff on credit cards, is crazy. So think about that, and especially think about it in the context of some of those people might be our tenants, and we really want to be careful that they don't overextend themselves, especially if interest rates keep going further up. So that's kind of the summary of the news of the week. I think some interesting things happened, some good lessons for myself happened. I will pay more attention to where I have my phone, and I will be a good boy on LinkedIn. And what's coming with interest rates, we need to keep an eye on. So be well, stay safe, and I'll talk to you next week.